Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Marin Energy Authority Board meeting for January 5th, 2012, in what I think you'll find to be a very historic meeting in the annals of MEA, because for the first time tonight, we actually have board members representing every city as well as the county in Marin. And looking around the room, I just want to personally say how excited I am to have all of you participating. I've had an opportunity over the years to work with many of you individually, but collectively I think this group is going to be dynamite with the energy and talent we have here. I will note that actually a majority of the board is now lawyers. So,
have fun with that.
We're going to have a 2-minute limit.
Yeah. Well, actually, I was going to twist it around and say that, you know, not just for that reason, but overall, I think what we'll find with this group is the right questions will be asked. We're going to really dig into the details. Because this is going to be an interesting year. We are going to embark on an expansion that will take us from 14,000 customers all the way up to 95,000 customers. We're going to be looking at different kinds of operations beyond our basic function of supplying renewable energy to our customers and looking at energy efficiency programs and considering a PACE program. To name a few. So we have a strong operation team right now. As all of you know, we're off to a great start in our relatively short history. And we're really counting on all of you for your ideas, your fresh perspective, and again, your critical eye as well. So with that, our first item on the agenda is the swearing in of new board members. And I'm going to turn it over to Dawn to get that going.
Great, thanks very much. So this is always an exciting formality to go through, and we'd like to extend a very warm welcome to all of our new board members here this evening. And we'd like to go through the formality of swearing you in and reading the oath of office. So our new board members that are going to be sworn in this evening include our representative from Larkspur, Director Rifkin, and our representative from Corte Madera, Director Kroc, our representative from Novato, Director Athos, and our representative from Ross, Director Martin. So if you all could stand and raise your right hand, please. And you can repeat after me.
Am I new?
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked that. We have two members who are serving tonight as alternates, and as far as I know, have not yet been formally appointed by their council, and we're hopeful that that you will be by February, but I could be wrong about that, Larry. Did something happen that I'm not aware of?
Yeah, no, I've been appointed.
Very good. Okay, then we can also have it. We actually have it on standby for you, so you can sign it tonight and everything. Thank you very much.
Your identity is confirmed.
We'll need a retinal scan later.
Okay, so you'll need to state your own name when I say this. State your name. So I state your name. Do solemnly swear.
I, Elizabeth Cox, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely,
that I take this obligation freely,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Thank you very much. You're now official. we leave this evening, if each of you could make sure and stop by and see Sarah, our clerk, who has a written oath of office for you to sign, so that we can have that all in our files. Thank you very much.
All right, welcome everyone. Moving to item 2, board announcements. Director Marshall.
I just simply wanted to go on the record, letting all of you know that I have decided to resign from the MEA board. It's the good news and it's the bad news. The bad news, because I really would rather never leave this board. I am, as you all know, just passionate about what we do here at Marin Energy Authority, and have so enjoyed working with my board colleagues and the amazing staff that we have, and all of our advocates and everyone that we work with. It truly is an amazing family, and it has been like a family through all the up and down and thick and thin. So the bad news is that I have to go, but the good news is that the reason for that is that the organization that my partner Megan and I formed, Megan Matson and I, Lean Energy, is going very well, and we have opportunities to do work in California related to expansion that we wanted to be able to pursue without feeling like there would ever be any kind of conflict. And I can say for sure there is no conflict, has not been any, and we just want to make sure that we keep it that way. And so it's a bittersweet time, because it'd be great to be able to do both, but sometimes you can't. And I'm very confident that we are all swimming down the same river and trying to make more, develop market scale for CCA and improve the product and make sure that we've got a clear voice at the PUC, etc. So I'm not going away. I'll just be sitting over there instead of over here. So anyway, more soon. And Ken Wachtel couldn't be here tonight, but he will be replacing me as Mill Valley's liaison to this board. So it's been a blast.
Another lawyer.
Another lawyer. You can expect that your meetings are going to get longer than that.
Shouldn't be that way.
Well, and Sean, we are going to be more formally recognizing you at the last meeting for your years of service and welcoming Ken. So you have to come to the next meeting.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so let's move to, first of all, any other board announcements? Okay, item 3, public open time. Okay. The new year getting off to a slow start. Item 4, report from Executive Officer Don.
Great. I'll be very brief this evening. I wanted to thank those who joined us at our holiday potluck festivities, which were held on December 15th at the Robson Harrington House in San Anselmo. We really appreciated those of you who came by, and I think we all enjoyed getting to spend some time in a more relaxed way with everyone and celebrate the season. So thanks a lot for coming out for that. I wanted to make sure that everyone's got on their calendars our field trip that is scheduled for the 18th of January. That's 2 weeks away on a Wednesday. We're going to be departing here from the parking lot at 8 a.m. We'll be doing some carpooling, so be ready for that. And then we'll be returning by 3 p.m. So we have a fun day planned where we'll be visiting 2 different facilities where we've purchased power. And we'll be learning a bit about the solar facility that is operating by the South San Joaquin Irrigation District. It's a really unique and interesting facility. The public is welcome to attend as well, of course, and so the address of our meeting places will be posted on our website. Please, if you haven't already RSVP'd, let us know if you're planning to attend so that we can make sure we have a head count for board members in carpools. The next announcement I wanted to make is that we've received a recognition from the Environmental Protection Agency as a 2012 Green Partner. And so we've received another year now of being awarded this honor. And this is an honor that's awarded to entities in the United States who are really going above and beyond to purchase green power and serving as a model to other communities. So we have a plaque in our office that reflects this award, and something we should all be very proud of. And the last announcement I have is that just this week, we received a certification letter from the California Public Utilities Commission certifying MEA's revised implementation plan. The implementation plan is a requirement as per AB 117, which authorizes and allows for CCA programs to operate. When we expand to new communities, we're required to resubmit our implementation plan, and we actually updated a number of sections of the implementation plan so that it reflects a lot of current information operationally and otherwise. And this certification marks the point in time where we can begin enrolling customers from the new jurisdictions. So anyone from the new communities that's interested in participating in our Deep Green program is now eligible to sign up and can call and do that. And we're going to be spreading the word about that in the coming months. We have some plans for outreach, but feel free to spread the word in your own communities. And that's it for my report today.
Great, Don. Any questions for Don on her report? Okay, great. Item 5, consent calendar. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review that beforehand.
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Okay, that matter carries. Item 6, appointment of board members to technical committee and executive committee. As most of you hopefully know by now, these are kind of our main 2 standing committees, and we also have several ad hoc committees. Don and I have been in the process of soliciting volunteers for these committees. It's an ongoing process, but tonight at least I wanted to give you a report on where we're at with the technical committee, executive committee. So here, our goal is to actually appoint 5 members to each committee. And here's the roster we have, at least at this point, based on preliminary signs of interest and discussions. So technical committee would be chaired by Dick Collins, who's currently serving that role. Jonathan Leone would serve on that committee, Chris Martin, and Ford Green. So Dick, Jonathan, Chris, and Ford. Sean currently is a member, but will be vacating that, so we will need 1 additional member on technical committee. And that, frankly, is where a lot of the rubber meets the road, where we dig into the more technical aspects of proposed projects and programs. It's a great way to kind of get the full details and weigh in on the technical aspects of what we do. Executive committee, that will be chaired by myself. Supervisor Kate Sears will actually be stepping in as vice chair of the board with Sean's departure, so Kate will also be on XCOM. Len Rifkai and Denise Athos. We actually need 1 other person on XCOM, so keep that in mind. And then we will be contacting you separately. There are several opportunities for ad hoc committees, including rate setting. We have an ad hoc contracts committee, as well as looking at expansion issues going forward. So to be continued, but does anyone have any questions at this point? Does that sound accurate? Did I improperly volunteer anyone there? Okay, good. All right, Don, anything to add on that?
Just one clarification that Director Green is interested in technical committee, but because he has not been confirmed by his council yet, the appointment might need to be a provisional appointment until that happens.
Sure.
That's expected next week.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You foresee any problem?
I'm waiting for confirmation of my identity. I'm secure it will happen.
And then I'd also like to just thank everyone that's come forward and volunteered to serve on one of these 2 committees. We really appreciate it. It's very helpful to us to have you all participate in this way. And the ad hoc committees will be taking up very soon. We actually have a couple of ad hoc meetings that need to happen later this month. So we may be getting together to appoint folks to those committees even before our next board meeting.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I mean, I think what you'll find with this board is we really rely on our committees and value the work they do. It's a lot of experts weigh in at that level. There's a lot of real good discussions that in turn helps us make decisions at the board. So, okay, great. Why don't we move to item 7, communications update?
Oh, I think we need a motion for
Yeah.
this.
Are we ready to actually confirm? So we're gonna, this will be kind of
Meetings in 2 weeks.
this will be a provisional kind of approval of these names, basically.
It's
Well-
only provisional for Director Green.
Right, that's correct. The appointment would be permanent for those that have been listed, and then there will still be more to be done. And also then the vice chair position will need to be done at the next meeting.
Okay, so we'll do that, and then we'll also get the vacancy filled.
Yes.
Next meeting.
Right.
and Director Green will be on board.
Yep.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Okay, that matter carries. Item 7, communications update. Gene?
Will there be a financial committee named? And will that be?
Go ahead and take the mic.
Will it be the economic committee or financial advisory? Because you will be consolidating funds.
Actually, can you repeat?
What's the timing?
Are you referring to the rate setting committee? Yes, we do have a rate setting committee, and we've had a couple of folks that are departing, so we have some vacancies on that committee, and we will be adding some new members to that committee very soon, because we need to have a meeting coming up towards the end of the month. But we're not doing that this evening, it wasn't on the agenda.
That will be announced in your website.
Yes, that, yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, Gene, so the 3 ad hocs would be rate setting, contracts, and staff.
Thank you.
Okay. And Don, do you anticipate next meeting we'll be able to deal with those?
Yeah, we may need to have, depending on timing, we may need to have a special meeting pulled together. We may try and put that on the same day as our field trip if it looks like we're going to have a quorum, in order to simply make the appointments to those ad hoc committees. Because there are 2 ad hocs where it would be beneficial to have a meeting towards the end of January. So because we have a lot of new members coming on, we haven't quite firmed up who's going to be on what committee, but as that solidifies over the next week, we'll be looking for a time to probably hold a special meeting where we can do those appointments on a formal basis.
Okay, great. Anything else? All right. Item 7, communications update. Jamie?
Thank you. So I have a few things to report out on tonight. First of all, I wanted to talk about our upcoming advertising campaign, which I'm really excited about. It's going to be at least 4 months, and it'll be commencing in March, running through the end of June. And we've reserved bus shelters, bus backs, space in the Marin IJ and Pacific Sun for weekly half-page ads, as well as online ads on the websites for those 2 local papers. So that'll be commencing in March, and it'll be featuring real customers who are local businesses and private parties as well who endorse Marin Clean Energy. So I'm really excited about getting that campaign developed, and I think we'll be talking more about that at our next executive committee meeting, as well as some other potential venues for advertising, potentially radio, local television commercials, and I'd love to hear what other ideas the board might have. The advertising campaign will be in really good timing with the noticing for our next phase of enrollment. It's likely that we'll be enrolling more customers in July of next year, and if we move forward with that, we'll start noticing customers in April. So there will be at least 1 full month of a pretty intensive advertising campaign before the noticing begins. And when we did our last phase of enrollments, it was in August of 2011, and we evaluated feedback from the customers who were in that group, and what we learned is that a lot of the customers weren't necessarily seeing their notices in the mail, And so as a result of that, we've decided to change our process a little bit. We want to send more than the 4 required notices. We'd like to send at least 5. And instead of just sending the postcards, we also want to send letters. And so customers get an opt-out notice not only if they're being enrolled into Marin Clean Energy in one of our phases, but they also get the notices if they move into a home and it's activated with Marin Clean Energy. If someone moves into a home and starts a new electric account, they'll get 2 notices from us. And we have started sending them the letter as well as a postcard, and those are attached to the staff report for your review. So the letter has, in bold letters, important information about your electric account inside. And we've changed our postcard to be a little bit more direct as well, with the yes/no text to encourage, and basically show that someone needs to take action, and hopefully not just throw the postcard away. So we'll be implementing that type of noticing in our next round of enrollments, and continuing as well with new move-in customers. And then the other thing that I wanted to just give you an update about was in regard to the solar rebate that your board approved last December. And basically the board approved a $500 rebate to allow any Marin Clean Energy customer who installs a solar system that's at least a ½ kilowatt in size to get a $500 rebate from us. And so we've created a really easy form and application for customers to fill out, as well as an energy efficiency checklist that requires all of the customers to review the checklist and consider implementing different measures that we've recommended to increase their efficiency. And that's all been posted on our website, and we've also issued a press release. Those items are attached to your staff report, and we've gotten actually a good amount of calls about the solar rebate so far, and we'll be sending out direct marketing to customers who have been identified as having a high potential for solar, encouraging them to take advantage of this rebate and install solar on their homes. So that's actually all that I had to discuss tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Jamie. On the opt-out notices, I know some of the member jurisdictions have expressed an interest in providing input in terms of how to best inform the public on those. Is that kind of...
Yeah, I was thinking that our next executive committee meeting would be a great place for us to discuss that, but also if any of you are, whether you're new to the board or not, if you would like to talk to me about the notices, I'd love to get your opinion and your feedback, and if you have any ideas or recommendations, I'm completely welcome to those. So I'm always in the office.
I understand there are some jurisdictions that are interested in doing some additional outreach above and beyond what we would be doing, and we really encourage that, and we love to work collaboratively to make sure that the noticing is as clear and accurate as possible, and the more the better really on the outreach. So please do contact Jamie or I about additional outreach ideas that you may have.
One of the other things that we're planning as we get closer to the next phase of enrollments is doing community events in each of the new member cities and towns to basically invite the public to get up to speed on what Marin Clean Energy is.
Great, Director Mark.
I think it's a great decision to go with 5 opt-out notices rather than the 4 required. And I like the idea of the letter as well. Question. Will the name of the ratepayer be on the letter itself?
Yes, and in the letter that's attached to the staff report, there's some text at the top that's in italics, and it says name, but
Right.
yes, there will be the name on the outside of the letter and on the letter the way it's addressed.
And you're able to get those addresses and account holders?
Yeah, it's something that we've been working with PG&E to make sure that when they provide us with the information, that it's up to date. When we did our last enrollment, a lot of the information wasn't completely accurate as far as names,
Yes.
so we weren't able to include customer names on the outsides of the mailers.
Jimmy, are you planning outreach programs in every community or just when you're invited? And the reason I asked is the first time this started out, it was very confusing to people, understandably. It's going to be confusing this time, hopefully not quite as confusing, but there are many more customers involved.
Yeah.
And I wonder if we really ought to go full force with outreach in every community.
I think we can definitely go out to every community, and we're being really proactive as, you know, we're going to be really proactive as far as, you know, organizing these types of events and reaching out to the cities and towns to get information in your newsletters, and yeah, I think that's something that we can do.
Good.
Director Adams.
There you are. Is there a way after somebody, like let's say somebody opted in and or they don't opt out right away, you know, they want to join and they're automatically in, or somebody wants to leave. Are those people that are in it, do they not get a letter again? I mean, because I mean, there's nothing more frustrating than if you see something the 5th time when you've already won it.
Oh, so if a customer receives a notice from us and then they opt out and we
Right.
process that,
Right.
right, then we stop sending them the notices.
Then you stop. Okay, that's good.
Director Green.
There's been a lot of public controversy over the opt-out process. It's caused a lot of grief. People characterize it as being coercive. They say they want to make a proactive choice and not to have to make a defensive choice. And so, to me, that's a mechanism that has to do a lot with our public relations. And so the more delicately and directly we handle addressing the opt-out proposition, the better we're going to look, I think. And so in that regard, when I look at the card, and above where the address is going to be, where it says in bold, important information about your electricity service, to me, that seems a little mild. And really what ought to be there is something more direct that says, notice of right to opt out, or something along those lines, so that there's no question about what the nature of this document is. There's no mistaking it for junk mail and throwing it in the garbage can and then saying, oh, MEA, they're not any different than other people that are trying to coerce our choices and not respecting our freedom of consent. And I think that we look better and be more effective in what we're trying to do and be more credible if we were more direct in our notice giving. And then also with respect to the letter, the language in the opt-out paragraph, 3/4 of the way through, talking about you will not be charged a termination fee if you opt out within 60 days of automatic enrollment or cancel electric service. To me, that seems a little indirect. What the language ought to be is something like, if you fail to opt out within 60 days of automatic enrollment, you're going to be charged a fee. So that the language is crystal clear, and we're not in the position of in an already controversial mechanism being characterized as somehow disregarding the rights of the consumer and not respecting the choices.
Director Rivka.
Just to follow up on what Ford was saying on the card, Jamie, it seems, you know, the controversy again is everyone is automatically enrolled, and so when the card says yes, no, it makes it seem like to the ratepayer that they have that election yes, no, when really the election really is only no, not yes. At least when they're getting this card. So yes, no, just the way it's written, to my simple mind, is confusing, and so I'm thinking that we just need to work on that so that it's quite clear that your election you're supposed to be making is no or do nothing. And so I don't think that I think we need to work on that a little bit, at least in my opinion.
I think this is all really good feedback, Don.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, this is really great feedback. I think that everyone has a slightly different interpretation of what is clear language, but I just heard some great comments that I think we can really use. So that really is the goal here, is to be as clear as possible. And you know, the yes, no felt like a really clear, you know, message, and maybe there's something we could do that's even better than that, that makes it crystal clear. And so this feedback is very helpful, and we'll have an opportunity to get a little more in the weeds on this discussion at our executive committee meeting. So, and we're open to feedback anytime between now and then. So keep the feedback coming. We still have some time before these need to go out in the mail in a couple of months, so it's very helpful.
Director Athens.
Yeah, I was just thinking when you said that that's so true, because it is. And maybe it's just stay or go, because then one is just, somebody will just say.
There was a song that way.
Yeah, right.
I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
You know what, yeah, let's keep those ideas coming, and check in with your folks in your cities and towns, and, you know, it sounds like there's some sentiment out there, so let's get it right and be clear about what we're doing.
One of the things that people have said to me is that it's really important to emphasize that they have a choice, so we might consider saying something like, it's your choice. So people do feel, although they're in it automatically, they do have a choice to decide what to do afterwards. So, just another thought.
That's great. Director Martin.
And you might want to use the word transparency, or even use transparent paper. I mean, we really should stress that we're trying to put this out as boldly, as clearly as possible.
Invisible.
Yes.
Yeah, choice and transparency. Okay, to be continued on that. Mr. Dyer, member.
If I may, I have another minor suggestion along the same lines. Is this on?
Yes.
And that is that while you have a date on the letter, there's no date on the card. And I presume that you're going to 5 and 60-day limit. There's no date for the cutoff. So if you haven't saved a letter, you don't know when the 60 days are up, or if you don't know how many days are in a month, you've lost something. So I think you ought to have a cutoff date put in on all the things that go out, so people know, hey, whoops, you got to do it now, or what can happen. Thank you.
Any other board comments, members of the public, questions? Okay, and we'll continue to work through this. It sounds like it'll be referred to the XCOM as well. Okay, well, great discussion on that. And anything else for Jamie on her communications update? Okay. Item 8, regulatory analyst position adjustment.
Great, so I'll introduce this item. Back in November, your board approved 5 new positions for MEA as we're preparing to grow quite a bit and expand to new customers in the coming year. One of these positions was classified as a regulatory analyst position. The compensation analysis was done prior to board approval and was reviewed and discussed by our executive committee at a couple of meetings. So what we're bringing back before the board tonight is one position, the regulatory analyst position, which we'd like to adjust the job description in 2 ways. What we're looking for is an ability to create a 2-tiered structure for this position to allow for a more junior candidate to apply and fit into this position, in addition to the ability for a more senior candidate to fit into this position. And so we just wanted to broaden it slightly to allow us to draw from a greater pool of applicants. So the 2 changes that are being proposed here are, first, the starting point for the salary range has been reduced from $65,000 to $55,000 per year. And there, I need to clarify here that there's a discrepancy between the attached job description and the staff report. What was intended here is $51,000 even, not $51,500. So I apologize for that discrepancy. The second change is that we would be breaking this position into 2 tiers to allow for growth, so that if we were to bring on a more junior candidate, they would have the ability to grow over time and move into the 2nd tier for the position. So there would be a tier 1 and a tier 2, with the first tier coming in at the lower part of the salary range. Are there any questions? Yep.
Director Redpath.
Was there, because this is my first meeting, is there someone on staff who's like an HR professional, or does staff have access to HR consultants to figure something like this out?
Yes, we can contract with ADP Resources for all of our human resources functions. They provide compensation analysis for us when we're looking at developing new positions. They also consult with us on the creation of the job descriptions to ensure that they conform to state and local labor laws and other regulations. And they were very helpful in creating all of these positions, including this one. So the change that's being proposed here is reflects some of the applicant pool and our initial interviews and discussions, looking at who's actually out there right now and making sure that our position is a good fit for the pool of applicants that's currently out there.
And this individual would be working with Beth, is that correct?
Yeah, this individual will be working with Beth and also interfacing a bit with other folks on our team. Because the regulatory realm touches things that others of us do, there would be a need to interface with some of our other staff, including our technical team. Right now, our technical team is having to spend time on regulatory issues by default, because we don't have other folks to jump in on that work. In some cases, the regulatory items interface a bit with communications or interactions with PG&E on billing, and at other times there are regulatory items that really impact some of our operational activities, and so there may be a need for this person to interact with others, but they'd be working most closely with Beth.
Thank you. I think the concept of having the 2 tiers really makes a lot of sense. I didn't see in the job description, though, it lists the 2 different categories, the 2 tiers in terms of the salary differentials. But it seems to me you're going to want to beef up under the qualifications section the description of experience education to really capture 2 different tiers, because right now, at least unless I missed it, which is always possible, other than the 2 tiers for salary, there's just a single description of everything else related to the position. So I think you might want to fine tune it some.
Yeah, the main difference between the 2 tiers really would be reflective of the years of experience doing the work.
Right, yes, but that isn't captured in the qualifications section. All it refers to is a minimum of 2 years, and it doesn't say what the difference in terms of years of experience or other qualifications would actually distinguish tier 1 from tier 2.
Yeah.
So I really think you should elaborate in that section a little bit.
Okay, yeah, we could do that. We spent some time looking at that and considering some changes, and what we found as we looked at it is that the description of tasks that would be taken on are generic enough that they really would apply both to a senior person or a junior person. It's just the level that they would be interfacing with the tasks.
I understand that part, but I think you should think through whether you're going to have a minimum of 5 years experience, for example, in order to qualify for tier 2 or something of that.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of the tasks, it's very easy.
Yeah, it could either be
HR person can help
experience,
you do it.
qualification.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I just
good.
think you need a little more clarification on it.
Yeah, okay, that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, this is my first meeting also, so can you just tell us what kind of benefits go with a position like this?
Sure, absolutely. And it's a great opportunity to talk a little bit about how our HR has been set up and what types of benefits we have. Because we've spent a lot of time on this as a board over the last year or so. We currently offer benefits that are really similar to what you see in this sector in California. Similar number of holiday days, sick days, and that sort of thing. We also offer retirement, contributions to retirement, as well as we cover medical benefits for all employees, including dental and vision. We have a very lengthy and very well thought out employee handbook, which many lawyers participated in helping us with, which is available if you'd like to get a sense of all the nuances of what we offer to our employees. So would you like to add more on that, Beth?
I think that, just to give a little bit of context, when we separated from the County of Marin, we moved into a PEO, which is a professional employer organization. So they basically did the HR, we were technically employees of a different agency. We decided to spin off and have our own employees of record. And so now all of our employees are employed directly by the Marin Energy Authority. During that point of separation, there was really extensive board involvement and discussion about how exactly a public agency, a new public agency, should be structured. And so I think that the core idea is, we tried to maintain continuity with respect to health benefits, health, dental, life insurance, disability and long-term disability insurance, remain a semblance of continuity between what was provided at the County of Marin and through regional government services, which was the PEO provider. And moving forward, I think that the key divergence when we became employees of record of the Marin Energy Authority, and this was a real consensus opinion, is we moved away from a defined benefit, so pensions. We are not part of a pension plan. We pay into Social Security, and while we receive, every employee receives a defined contribution, it's similar to how a 401k contribution happens in the private sector. It's technically a 401A instead of a 401k. And then we have a separate plan called a 457 plan, which is closer to a 401k where an individual can contribute to their own retirement. So I think that that's the key difference between many cities and towns and our agency, is that we aren't. It was decided that we're not going to provide lifetime medical benefits and have lots of outstanding long-term liabilities, but instead run more like a private company in those regards.
Director Marshall.
Yeah. The only thing I would add for purposes of the new board members is when we went through this, I guess it was in late 2010, when we were figuring all this out, we did make a decision to have MEA be more reflective of the private sector, which you just mentioned. And when we looked at the range of options in every category, and I think we had a whole page of sort of line items, whether it's sick leave, comp time, compensation, all of those different line items, we really strived to hit it in the middle. So we didn't go with the Cadillac version, and we didn't hit the bottom of the barrel. We were very conscious to make sure that our package and our compensation was really middle of the pack. And that is typically reflected to what often happens on the public sector side. So I think that you'll be satisfied once you read that fabulous employee handbook. It's very well thought out.
Okay, any further questions from the board or public? Okay, so we'll need a motion on this item.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? That matters. Okay, item 9, and this is going to be a key item going forward, is open season for MEA procurement.
Good. Okay, so with an eye towards program expansion in the current year, and with that expansion, increased contributions from renewable energy to that supply portfolio, we began discussions, I believe it was back in October, with the technical committee about the potential to develop a new procurement process that would borrow a little bit from different industry standard processes and allow us to procure renewable energy on a going forward basis in little bites, kind of on an as needed basis. And so what we have in the staff report, as well as the 2 attachments, is a description of what we're calling an open season procurement process. And some of you that are new may not be familiar, but those of you that have been on the board now for a while are aware that so far, to date anyway, this agency has observed both industry standard procurement practices for its energy supply, as well as some unsolicited bilateral discussions with potential suppliers that have approached MEA. This is something that regularly occurs. Staff receives dozens of proposals throughout the year on an unsolicited basis from interested project developers that would like to supply renewable energy to MCE customers. And
Kirby, would this process fully replace that, or would there still be opportunities for bilateral?
There would still be opportunities for bilateral, and I think what we really want to try to do is channel those discussions and narrow them to the greatest extent possible. So we're really only dealing with truly fleeting opportunities. Usually opportunities, as I think we previously described, as being comparatively superior in virtually all respects to what we could otherwise find in the marketplace. These would be projects that would be, for example, locally situated, priced below market, relatively speaking, renewable technologies that are desirable on an operational basis for MEA's supply portfolio, as well as a number of other considerations. So those potential opportunities would still be in play, so to speak, but we would really try to narrow those discussions to the greatest extent possible and practical by using really a hybrid approach that borrows from a couple of different industry standard practices. For those of you that are new to the board, you may be aware that back in July of 2009, I believe, this board issued an RFP for energy supply to support its launch of the program in May of 2010, and then later in 2010, in December, we issued an RFP for renewable energy supply to meet specifically the renewable energy needs of our customers. And then another industry standard procurement program that we have in place is a standard offer contract. It's our feed-in tariff, which allows a very narrowly defined scope of projects to participate by taking advantage of a standard contract that's in place. And so long as these entities meet the requirements that have been defined in the standard offer, they can choose to enter into an agreement with MEA. Participation in that program is limited to small-scale, locally situated renewable projects. And what the open season does is it kind of borrows from both the RFP and the standard offer to create this ongoing semi-annual process for renewable energy procurement that will avoid the need to time the market when prices dip, and will avoid exposure to market prices if they do happen to run up over time, and will really allow for what amounts to a dollar cost averaging approach which you find in the investment sector to buying renewable energy, which is really quite responsible. So this first slide here, if we can move forward, we'll move through this pretty quickly, and most of this is just provided for your reference, and I would encourage you to look at this at your leisure, and we'll just kind of touch on some highlights as we go through this. But I already mentioned that staff regularly receives a number of unsolicited proposals. To date, we have observed standard industry procurement practices for both our conventional energy supplies as well as our renewable energy supplies, but we have also engaged in some unsolicited bilateral discussions with what we determine to be fleeting opportunities. Some of those contracts that have resulted are listed here in the staff report, and we've found that those are truly excellent opportunities that we're looking forward to taking advantage of here in the not too distant future when those projects are developed. As we move forward, we really need to keep a number of different things in mind. One is the need for renewable energy, specifically the quantities that we need as we move forward. As our program grows and new customers are enrolled, we're going to require quite a lot of renewable energy in the not not too distant future, between 300,000 and 400,000 megawatt hours by 2015, so that's a lot. We'll also want to keep in mind the timing of those needs. So we do have a contract in place at present with Shell Energy North America to meet the vast majority of our energy requirements. We will be securing additional supplies as we grow the program here in the not too distant future. But as we look forward, I think the goal of this agency is to foster the development of new renewable energy facilities, and this particular process will provide for those opportunities. And we also want to create a program here that is objectively administered, that's fair for interested project developers, and that also observes some procedural standardization, so we're not dealing with these suppliers on a one-off basis. So the next couple of slides really touch on some of the options that we use to date, the request for proposals process in particular. You can see here what it is and why it is that you would choose to use this particular procurement method. This has been very effective in addressing the full requirements energy supply that was needed to launch the MCE program, and it was also very effective in identifying a very specific project opportunity that was of interest to MEA following the December 2010 RFP for renewable energy. The problem with RFPs is that there's quite a lot of coordination that needs to go on. There's a very intensive marketing effort to get the word out to qualified developers. The evaluative effort is also considerable. Involvement from the board and specific committees that would get involved in these discussions takes quite a lot of time and rigor in order to execute. So there's a cost-benefit trade-off there in that you can really drive towards what you want specifically through an RFP, but it does take quite a lot of coordination, quite a lot of time, and quite a lot of resources from staff. One of the other options that I mentioned that we have in place currently is the standard offer. Our feed-in tariff is an example of that. Here is where you create a very narrowly defined scope in terms of the eligibility for these particular programs. In MEA's case, the feed-in tariff is designed to attract locally situated renewable energy projects of 1 megawatt less, so these are relatively small projects. We use a form contract, so there's literally no negotiation involved in these particular instances, and here we're able to really target a very specific subset of project opportunities that we want to engage in order to round out our energy supply portfolio. The open season really borrows a little bit from each one of these processes. Here we would have a formal recurring process that we'd be implementing on a semi-annual basis. There would be a March 1st due date for responses, as well as an August 1st due date for responses. It would be completed on a clearly defined schedule that the development community can familiarize themselves with. It's an opportunity for regular market check-in. So this is really a way to keep our finger on the pulse of the renewable energy markets, interacting with these developers on a semi-annual basis to see where prices are moving, what resources are being successfully developed, and other considerations such as that, and it avoids the need to time the market, which is really a concern that you get into if you just leave a large open position and then have to rely on dips or swings in the market prices in order to meet your cost constraints. So the program that we've developed here and the program that's discussed in the staff report really has some parameters that are they're narrowly defined but not too narrow, so it really involves quite a lot of creativity, or allows for quite a lot of creativity from the development community. This process does not create any obligation to procure by MEA, so we could get several responses and elect to proceed with none of them. We could proceed with one, we could proceed with more than one. So there's a lot of flexibility here for MEA. To facilitate this process, we've developed a standardized response template, and a printout of that template is attached to the staff report. tonight, and you'll see there that there is quite a lot of information that we're requesting from interested respondents. Everything from project-specific details to details about the responding organization, including its financial qualifications, development qualifications, siting considerations, including environmental issues, permitting considerations, and a number of different, it's basically a full breadth and scope of details that we would need to effectively evaluate project opportunities. And we'd be doing this, again, through a standardized response template that would really expedite our evaluation of these responses as they come in. This would allow us to load these into a template and really kind of sort out the good from the bad very quickly and drive towards those that we would want to proceed contract negotiations with. The size here is also a little broader based than the feed-in tariff, so we'd be looking at projects ranging in size from 1 megawatt up to 20 megawatts. So these are our truly utility scale projects that we'd be looking at. There is a correction here that I'd like to make. The annual energy limits, they should be, and I believe this is reflected in the open season overview that's attached to the staff report. It should be less than or equal to 45,000 megawatt hours. The reason for that number is this is what you could reasonably, the output that you could reasonably expect from a 20 megawatt photovoltaic solar facility that's operating at a kind of an industry standard number of hours throughout the year. So that adjustment I just wanted to point out. And that would really, 45,000 megawatt hours annually would serve nearly 7,000 typical MCE customers. So in terms of the project start dates for the facilities that we'd be looking to contract with, we would want to see a commercial operation date between January 1st of 2013 and December 31st of 2016. We would contemplate refreshing this as we move forward in the process on an annual basis. In all likelihood, we could push these dates out a year, but for the kind of current year's cycle, we would want to just look at that 4-year window, which should allow sufficient time for project development. The minimum contract term length that we'd be considering is 10 years. And as far as the energy price, what we want to see in our response template is a single flat price over the entire contract term. No escalators, no time of delivery adjustments. We really want to get one number that will allow for clear and easy comparison across a number of different proposals. Most suppliers are agreeable to this, we found, and of course they'll embed what their expected returns as well as any other adjustments within that price, and then that will certainly simplify our administrative efforts and comparisons here. And the other thing that we'll be asking for interested respondents to review and accept our MEA standard RE renewable energy contract terms. RE stand for renewable energy. We do ask that any exceptions to the standard terms are noted in the response template, so we know up front what it is that we're dealing with potentially during the negotiation process, and we can consider that when evaluating these respondents going into the next. So that's really an overview of the contemplated open season process. Most of those details are all discussed in the procedural overview that's attached to the staff report. And really, just to create a little context why this open season is important, is that this agency is expanding, its customer base is growing, and its renewable energy targets are also increasing over time. This slide here kind of shows you the trajectory that we're expecting to see here for MCE customers' renewable energy supply percentages, and you'll see that leaves us with quite a lot of procurement to do on a going forward basis. Some of that we've done to date, and this will allow us to take manageable bites of that outstanding procurement as we move forward in time. And that's really all I had. Just staff recommending that you consider and approve this particular process. We think that this is a really good hybrid approach to procuring renewable energy and will allow for a very manageable, easy to administer process, and will allow us to continue our positive interactions with the renewable energy development community on a going forward basis.
Director Rick.
Kirby, thank you. That was really detailed. Is there any concern with that will scare away potential opportunities for the renewable energy we're seeking or rolling out? All these customers, we're competing with all these other utilities in California, and we're little, and most of them are big. And so, how are we going to compete with them if we're like have the same fairly detailed and difficult? I'll just track that, not difficult, but there's a lot of terms and conditions there for folks to meet. So I'm just curious if there's a concern about that.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think one of the things that we found so far, this is feedback that we've received directly from the development community, is that they really appreciate the brevity of our negotiating and contracting process. They also appreciate the fact that we don't require regulatory approval of our agreements. Our agreements go before a board, and if they are approved and executed, then we move forward. So the length of time required for this process is considerably shorter than these developers will find when dealing with the investor-owned utilities, for example, or other buyers of energy out there in the marketplace, and that allows them to reduce their costs, whether they be development fees, legal fees, things like that. Despite kind of the laundry list of things that we're asking for here, our requirements and terms are far less restrictive and rigorous than you would find in dealing with one of the IOUs, the investor-owned utilities out there. So I think so far, we've got good feedback.
I take it your answer is no.
And if I might add to that response, because I'm the one typically getting the calls, we have a lot of interest out in the development community, and typically the first set of questions that I get is related to parameters. Well, what term are you looking for? What area are you looking for? What information do we need in order to put in a bid for you? So I think that this process is going to help facilitate developers submitting requests to us and allow us to evaluate them in a less ad hoc way than we've been doing to date. We do have a high quantity, a high volume of inquiries every week. And so I think that this process has really grown out of that experience, knowing that there's a lot of power out there being marketed. We certainly have not had a problem where there's a limited stream of folks trying to sell power to us, and this is just a way to make that process administratively simpler and easier to compare on an apples-to-apples basis. The other thing I'll add is that, as Kirby was mentioning, we do have some requirements here, as far as looking for a flat price without an escalator, that sort of thing. Some of these parameters are really intended to allow us to evaluate on an apples-to-apples basis, but are things that could be modified or negotiated once we get into the discussion process with a counterparty that we select to work with. We might find that an escalation rate actually is favorable to both us and the counterparty. So that's something that could be considered, as we go forward. But this gives us a really good starting point for our interaction with developers, and it'll allow us to, I think, accept and look at a wider range of applicants, whereas right now we don't have the bandwidth to look closely at everything that's coming to us.
Kirby, go ahead.
Okay. Dawn, I'm glad that you said that you guys have some flexibility on that flat price, because as Kirby alluded to, you'll pay for it anyway. So sometimes, you may be able to get a better deal if you can work out a small escalator, which might mean that your upfront costs are less and all of that. So I would actually recommend that you ask just that they can maybe provide both. Maybe not at the front end, but just a provision that they would be willing to provide both, just to do a comparison. And then the other is, I don't see here, and whether or not it's appropriate here, but are there any provisions for buyout on these contracts? And should that be stated as part of something they would be willing to consider?
So, just so folks have an idea of the process that we've gone through on the power purchase agreement side, is we've used our previous form contracts that we've used for the 2 solar facility PPAs that we've entered into. Under one of those contracts, we do have a purchase option, on the other one we don't. And so we integrated an optional sort of purchase option, and so it can be sort of removed or included as appropriate. And just to sort of tack onto that briefly is that power purchase agreement has gone through legal review through me, through Richard Spotsman Gershon, and also through Millbank, which is our project finance counsel.
But what I'm hearing you say though then is that that would be part of signing off on the renewable energy contract terms. So it's either in there or not, depending on what you want to look at. But I think what we want to do, and I'm hearing you say is possible, is that we leave the door open for that buyout if it turns out to make sense for us, right?
Yeah, what we've requested is that if there are any provisions in our contract that the counterparty would want to change, that they indicate that.
Okay.
So just so that we can evaluate clearly, you know, okay, well, they're gonna not wanna have a buyout provision, is that okay with us? And call it out. But the standard contract is going to be out there along with the matrix that we're asking folks to fill out. And it'll really put the onus on them to look at our contract terms and let us know what they like, what they don't like, before we have to make a decision about entering into negotiations.
Okay, and then last quick related, just for the group education here, have you guys found, and I guess this would be directed to Kirby, in your procurement experience, do you generally get more favorable terms when there is a buyout option on the table? Do you generally find that affects price downward, or is it on a case-by-case basis?
Yeah, you know, what we found so far is that it really kind of varies by seller. Some sellers, just for whatever reason, there's a business reason on their end, they simply don't want to offer that as an option. They want to hold the asset, own it, operate it on a going forward basis. Others are open to it and are really indifferent. But we haven't seen any major effects on price.
So there's no leverage there by saying we'll be willing to consider a buyout?
No, we haven't seen that.
No, it's been pretty arbitrary. Some really want it, some really don't.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
Kirby, in a general sense, MEA is unique as the first CCA in California. So really, we're in a buyer's market at this point for small and medium-sized producers. As CCAs develop, which they most certainly will, other CCAs, and we're going to expand, and they'll expand, will that competition create problems for us in getting energy at a reasonable price? Or will the market expand sufficiently to accommodate that?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And, you know, some of that requires consulting the crystal ball a little bit. And some of it, I think, you could reasonably say that the timeline for critical mass developing with CCAs to a point that would really apply meaningful pressure to the markets, because most of that pressure, I'd say most of the procurement interest already exists because you have load serving entities throughout the state that are accounting for all these customers, and they all have either statutorily imposed renewable mandates or their own internal mandates, and so they're out there buying this stuff anyway. And so I think the interest would really be incremental, and we wouldn't see this landslide push that we'd have to compete against so much. I think what we're more likely to find is that as the state's renewable portfolio standard percentage increases over time, as it does, towards 33% in 2020, there'll be some pressure. But I think that the market will respond to that. I think the pump is already primed, there's already awareness, and I think those development opportunities, even if they are in the early stages, are in the works.
Yeah, I remember, 3 years ago, we were told we wouldn't fund any renewables because PG&E was sucking it all up, right? I mean, we heard that, and that proved to be false. The market is we've seen it, we have more proposals than we can deal with. I think longer term, as demand does go up because of the mandates, what's really kind of changed is solar is almost an unlimited resource in the state of California, and the cost of solar has come way down. So that's really kind of an untapped source of renewable supply, which, you know, I don't look at the renewable supply as like a finite pool that is going to disappear. I mean, it really expands just like any other product in the market as the demand grows. So we're not really seeing that there's going to be this difficulty in procuring sufficient renewables at a reasonable price, whether there are additional CCAs or even the utilities, which are really the bigger buyers, are ramping up their efforts. Just haven't seen it.
Okay. One of the nice things, and I think, you know, you kind of alluded to this in the first part of your comments there, was that a lot of the time we're competing for different project sizes. You know, the interest in this kind of 1 to 20, 30 megawatt size project is really, that's not the utilities wheelhouse necessarily. So, you know, we're a little unique that way, and I think we've got more flexibility in the project sizes that we engage with.
Kirby, question. When we did the RFP, I know we included a synopsis essentially of like the goals and objectives of the program, and we gave certain plus factors for, you know, was it a regional program, local program potential? Would we incorporate that kind of thing? How would we incorporate that into this program?
Yeah, I think we would likely ascribe similar weighting factors to those that we assigned in the previous renewable energy RFP.
I mean, we would know that, but part of it would be communicating that to the potential applicants as well, right?
Yeah, and one of the things that we're intending to do as part of this process, particularly in this first year that we'd be rolling this out, we'd be having an introductory conference call for interested respondents, where we would be communicating those types of things. And I also think that's something that we could probably include on our website as well, just indicating what some of our preferences may be and how it is that these different weighting criteria will be considered.
Yeah, it seemed like we really came up with some good language for that. So either include it on the website,
yeah,
or like the preparatory part of the packet or whatever.
Absolutely, I think that's something that we could probably build into the overview and just supplement that with the list of those criteria.
And related question: how would we actually get the word out that we're moving in this direction?
Yeah, we staff have really been great about compiling distribution lists, really since this agency formed. Individuals and organizations will write in, email in, and request to be added to our list. We have a list that we've just developed based on the solicitations that we've already run and communications that we have, sign-up sheets that we've had at different workshops, and it's pretty extensive right now. So that's really a first point of contact that we try to make, is using that contact list. And there are several dozen entities, organizations, and individuals on that list that will be receiving direct communications notifying them of this particular program. And then, of course, it will also be posted on the website as well. And then we'll have the call. I think those are the three ways that we'd be trying to get the word out. And then hopefully people will pick this up from whether it's the agenda and meeting materials here, or just discussions with other individuals.
And on that list, we also have some publications like the Megawatt Daily, great reading, and California Energy Markets, and they tend to, run little blurbs about these types of things.
They should give us a discount on the subscription.
They should.
Yeah, we're plugging right now. So.
Yeah. Well, they plug us.
Actually, I remember the meeting a couple of years ago where we had presentations, and they were enthusiastic presentations from developers. There was a great reaction. It was very fascinating to hear what they were presenting, and at least 2 of them were local. So I think this is great. I think it's a good process to go through.
Any further questions or comments, members of the public? Mr. Dye.
Thank you. Last month, I reminded you that the U.S. International Trade Commission determined that there was a reasonable indication that China was dumping solar PV panels and will continue to conduct its anti-dumping and countervailing duty investigations. With a report on January 12th and a preliminary anti-dumping duty determination due on or about March. While you may not yet have taken a policy decision on this matter, the adoption of any anti-dumping import duty could substantially change the economics of projects in project using Chinese components. In light of this activity, I would assume prudent for you to add an additional item on your information request list, requiring the provision of information relative to the national origin of major components to be used in any application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Stan Sparrow, and regarding the solar power is I have a bunch of actual solar bids that we're putting on Lori's houses, and I have applied for a $500 rebate. Wow, you wouldn't believe the hoops and hurdles we have to do to get that. Really a lot. And the bids here for a maximum allowed solar panel on a house is 9 or 10 kilowatts for a typical house. Average house in Marin with a hot tub and swimming pool. And the if Marin Clean Energy was to put a 9 kilowatt solar panel on that, and its guaranteed lifetime of 25 years, that solar panels makes $400,000 of energy. And if Marin Clean Energy was to start putting some smaller residential solar projects there, creating jobs for the community, getting solar panels for poor Marin residents, and they would just be metering the house on actual consumption. The net metering would be zeroed out. You guys would get any electricity, and it would look like something where the homeowner makes a year lease or 25-year lease of the roof space for like $1 a year or something like that. You guys get your space for solar in Marin rather than having the solar some other county and getting some jobs in Marin would be great. And have the we could do it on the Shepherd Way house, Lori's house, starting with that one and use it as a demo house, just as the first one, because we're going to do it anyways. And so I got all the documents for you of showing how much our PG&E bills and how much it's going to make, and documents and images of that for the record. And another invitation thing on Saturday. Have you guys seen the movie Thrive? It's about what you're doing as a CCA, community choice, but it's not really on a grand scale. And would invite you, and would be really wonderful if we had a representative of the CCA, to the people there. We got the filmmakers and some of the people bringing their energy machines to this event, and because you're in the energy business, and this is what it looks like with the great big energy corporations and the small CCAs. That's what this movie is about, Thrive. I invite you to come and see it on Saturday at Lori's house in Tiburon. And here's your documents, whoever wants to see.
Okay. Okay, great, thank you. Anyone else from the public? Okay, bringing this item back. Don, you need a motion?
Could I just ask a question?
Yes, Director Byers.
Thanks.
Or soon to be director.
I think I am, actually. On Mr. Dyer's question about determining the manufacturer of the PV panels, is that, do we request that information? Is that something we could request? Is it legal to request it? Is it, or, you know, is there any provision that would prevent us from doing that?
Yeah, you know, we could certainly add something more specific in the template. So far in the template, what we request are the make and model of the proposed generation equipment, and then, you know, as well as the procurement status of the equipment. So there is some, and we do request that they attach documentation noting what that equipment is and specifications related thereto. So, you know, I don't know if that's something that we would want to call out specifically, or if that's something that we could clear up during the negotiating process. I think that's, you know, I think either way.
So we would be adding a country of origin question on our template.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, is that something we could do? Or is that something we think would be counterproductive? Because it's an interesting question, and you know, I mean, I would be interested because we're creating sort of a multiplier effect with what we're doing, and it just would be interesting to see how far that goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think subject to any, you know, legal concerns.
I'm not sure if there's an issue there or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we cleared that up, we could probably include that.
Yeah, I think so. I think it would be really interesting information to get, to see, you know, what quantity, because most of the folks we talk to, you know, there aren't U.S. manufactured panels, for example, available, except Solyndra had some that were very expensive. So it would be interesting feedback for us to get to see, you know, where are these panels. I think the other thing that we may run into is that in some cases when the projects are still in the early stages, they haven't done their procurement yet. So we may want to word it in such a way that it says, if available, please provide information about the country of origin or the location of manufacture. So we can double check that legally we're okay requesting that information, and maybe, you know, leave it open, say if available, please provide.
At least on a
Dawn, is that a fact, that none are produced in the United States now?
I couldn't say for sure, but at least the folks that we've talked to that have
What, either
competitive
Indonesia
pricing.
or China?
Typically it's China.
Oh.
It's typically this.
Greg, do you want to take a
We'll take a look at that.
Commerce law. Director Marshall, did you have a question?
No.
Okay. Yeah, interesting issue there. Anything else at this point? Okay, I need a motion on this item.
I so move to approve the open season for MEA procurement as described by Mr. Dizzle.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, Kurt. Okay, item 10, regulatory update. For those new members, you will come to look forward to this item.
Everybody's favorite part of the evening.
You'll learn about acronyms, PUC, process.
We're gonna time you.
Yeah, well, usually I'm the last item on the agenda. I'm not the last item tonight. So usually it's, you know, you save your dessert until last. You know, I'm gonna do a slightly different type of overview than I usually do, just because since there are a couple new board members, and also leading up to the end of the year, there are a lot of decisions on the final commission agenda for the year, but in terms of filings and other things happening, it's a little bit slower. So now is a good time to give just the overview and recap of what we're doing at the Public Utilities Commission and a couple of items that have either happened key changes that have happened in the past couple of months and a couple of items that are coming up. So there are two main ways that we are interfacing with the Public Utilities Commission, and one is that we're participating in proceedings, and so you'll see a list of proceedings. These are sort of the topics that the Public Utilities Commission addresses. Right now we're active in about 15 proceedings. And these are proceedings that directly or indirectly impact CCA. And so we file comments, we provide expert testimony, so John and Vicky have provided expert testimony. We meet with commissioners in this policy-making process. So that's one component of what we're doing at the Public Utilities Commission. And the other component is more on an operational level, which relates to interface with the Commission's Energy Division. And so usually that's Dawn and Jamie that are working on sort of on-the-ground operational matters and questions. And I do want to make the note on acronyms, since it was brought up by Director Connolly, that the Commission absolutely loves acronyms. And I use a lot of acronyms. So to the extent that any of you have questions about acronyms, or just questions in general, since the regulatory landscape is is very complex. Any questions that you have, just reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions, talk at length about regulatory affairs if you like. And so I'm just going to go through a couple of different topics that we're currently working on. Just one general scope is that the Public Utilities Commission, the CPUC, develops rules that are applicable to everyone under their jurisdiction. So that includes PG&E, that includes us, and these sorts of items include the Renewables Portfolio Standards, so RPS. There are two key decisions came down in the past month related to RPS. One relates to renewable targets. We've been exceeding our targets, but the targets are increasing to reach 33% by the year 2020. Our objective is much higher than that. Another change in RPS in the recent decision changed how RPS, renewable energy, is counted. Instead of one uniform type of renewable energy, there's now 3 different types of renewable energy. Essentially, there's a preference for in-state renewable energy, and that's called colloquially bucket 1 energy, and then there's bucket 2 and bucket 3. So the contracts that we've entered into so far for specific resources are all in-state, so those are bucket 1 type resources. And when we enter into our phase 2 contract with Shell, we'll be looking closely at how do the new buckets impact our procurement in that regard. Another item that is applicable to everybody under the jurisdiction is reporting, and so Kirby does a lot of our reporting to the CPUC as well. That includes for resource adequacy and other items. One change that happened recently, and this is more for the benefit of our new board members, relates to exit fees. So when our customers leave the PG&E generation service and become CCA customers, they have to pay an exit fee, and the exit fee is on your bill over time, and it represents certain costs that PG&E has undertaken.
What has that been, 1.4 cents? 1.9 kilowatt hour.
Yeah, and recently there was a decision that came down to change the methodology of how that has been calculated. There was an incorrect or inaccurate methodology that was being used, and so this is going to cause a significant change once the new PCIA, power charge indifference adjustment, is going to be implemented, and this will reduce that exit fee by 40%. We don't know the exact number quite yet, but it's of that approximate magnitude. And so that has been a long regulatory path there, and it's really going to save save our customers a lot of money, and it's going to really be beneficial to CCA in the long term.
What's the timing on that? What to reduce?
That's a really good question. So the decision's already final, but the calculations still have to be run. Essentially, that should be coming up in the next couple of months, but one of the key advantages in an earlier decision, which we had requested of the commission, we asked that any changes to the PCIA be retroactive, and so it will be, the new PCIA will be retroactively applied to, I believe it was April 14th.
So will customers see a credit then?
Yes.
On their bill? Great.
Yeah, and so whatever you paid in PCIA, whatever you should have paid, they net it out, and people will receive a credit, potentially a significant one on their bill, depending on their energy usage, since it's a per kilowatt hour charge. One of the other sort of umbrellas that we work under at the Public Utilities Commission relates to cost allocation and rate design. And this is really to ensure that there isn't cost shifting happening by PG&E that would impose certain costs that should be allocated to the generation line item into the distribution line item. So essentially there are projects or costs that PG&E could undertake that benefit their generation customers, but not our customers. But our customers pay for those costs through the distribution line item, since our customers still remain, for purposes of transmission and distribution, PG&E customers. One of these, and closely related to that, is rate design. Many times PG&E will undertake rate changes that are called revenue neutral within their service territory, but may not be revenue neutral in our service territory. So the impact could be disparate in our service territory, but revenue neutral for the entirety of PG&E. And one of these has recently will be implemented in July this year. And this is, as Dawn referenced earlier, our rate changes are going to be going into effect in July to take into account this structural rate change. And the structural rate change is called the Conservation Incentive Adjustment, CIA. And so you'll be hearing that acronym a lot coming up. And I really apologize for all of the acronyms I do. But I do want to give everybody a little bit of background, since these will be core issues coming up in the next couple of months. The Conservation Incentive Adjustment will change the current generation rate structure, which is currently tiered into 5 separate tiers, and change it into a single flat generation rate, but then couple it with a non-generation either credit or adder on a month-by-month basis. So when you add the generation rate together with the conservation incentive adjustment, in theory, a bundled customer, so a PG&E customer would see effectively no change on their bill. However, for us, it means that our rate needs to compete not with a tiered rate, but with a flat generation rate. And so that is a change that's going to be coming up, and that will influence rate design decisions coming up. Dawn and I have been going to the commission of late to speak with commissioners and with staffers regarding progress being made or information that we still need from PG&E to ensure that they are implementing this rate properly. So we've had extensive ex parte meetings with commissioners, which have been included in your packet. I included only one as a sample of what the topic of conversation was, but we've had several meetings. Do you want to touch on anything on that?
I'm happy to elaborate if there are questions, but we do have a lot of detailed information about kind of the history behind why the CIA is being implemented, and it has a big impact on how we set our rates. and also has some impact on the timing of enrollment for our customers. And it's not a coincidence that the CIA implementation is aligned with our full rollout because of the impact that it has on customers. So I'm happy to go into more detail if there are any questions.
Have you made any headway with discussions with the commission?
Yes, we've received a lot of attention around this issue, and it has caused there to be a pretty high level of engagement in our discussions with PG&E, particularly around billing issues, because one of the things that the CIA causes us to need to do is to fully enroll to all of our customers. When we fully enroll, we want to make sure that there are very few billing hiccups that happen with PG&E. We're still experiencing a pretty moderate to high level of billing hiccups with PG&E, and there have been quite a few issues they have not been able to resolve. And so we are hopeful that the push and the requirement that CIA go into effect at this time in the summer will cause PG&E to, for some extra pressure to be applied for PG&E to resolve these issues. There's been some very frequent meetings with PG&E over the last 4 weeks where commissioners' staff have attended to work on these down in the weeds billing issues, and as have representatives from the CPUC's energy division. In fact, the head of the energy division has participated in a couple of these meetings. So a lot of attention is being paid to make sure that we don't have a lot of billing issues when we hit full rollout. There's also been some discussion about potentially delaying CIA in Marin County until PG&E can demonstrate that it's able to bill correctly. So that's one thing that we've been discussing with commissioners. However, no delay has been imposed yet, and we need to make our procurement decisions very soon. So it's likely that we'll need to go forward without waiting for a final decision on that much longer.
And this has been going on with PG&E for what, 2 years now?
Well, many of the issues that we've raised, we have about, how many issues on our issues list now? About 34? 34. We have a start date next to each one. Many of them were raised in May of 2010, some of them before that. So that many of them are long-standing issues. And just to give you all an example, because this is the sort of thing that we may see when we're enrolling and we have a larger customer base to serve. There was an issue recently. Every day we submit charges to PG&E for our customers, and on one particular day these charges weren't accepted by PG&E's system, and PG&E neglected to notify us of this error until about 6 days later. The billing window for each customer is only 3 days. So after 6 days went by, the PG&E charges were the only charges that went out on the customer bill, which means that NCE customers only got, they got a much smaller bill in November, December, but then that means that they will get a double bill or a much bigger bill next time around. We insisted that mid-cycle bills go out to make sure folks didn't get a very large bill in December, but still there's a lot of confusion when you get a mid-cycle bill after you've already received a bill with PG&E charges. So a lot of confusion. This impacted 2,500 customers. And to make matters worse, we did receive a few calls from customers that had been told when they called PG&E about this mid-cycle bill, which they didn't understand. PG&E informed that it was an NCE error. So these are the kinds of challenges that we've been working very hard to resolve.
They never change, do they?
Do you have any update, Dawn, on when the PUC might make a decision on the CIA issue?
I don't anticipate a decision in the next few weeks, and I think that if we get 3 weeks out from this point, it will not be possible for us to adjust our schedule anymore because we need to make procurement decisions in the near term. And So we'll know more in a couple of weeks, but I think that it's very likely that we're going to go forward with the original plan of rolling out in July and remain hopeful that this added pressure that has been brought to bear on the billing issues will result in a little bit of a smoother rollout for our customers as some of these issues hopefully will be resolved.
And PG&E recently set their rates, and that's for the next year, basically, so we know their rates at this point.
Yeah, that's another issue. A rate filing went in on December 30th, as it does every year, and PG&E has set their generation rate. However, they have not yet provided us with the breakdown of how that will apply under CIA. We requested that information this week, and we're hopeful that that will be provided to us as soon as next week. That will be very important information for our rate setting discussions.
Is the CIA the time of use billing?
No, the CIA stands for Conservation Incentive Adjustment, and what it reflects is a shift of the tier effect that's currently on the generation side of the bill, shifting that to the non-generation side of the bill. So that's what CIA stands for. And so as the tiers are shifting off of the generation side, which is our side, we need to then we don't want to double tier customers, because then a customer with high usage would end up with, you know, a 50% higher bill, for example. So the CIA is causing us to look at a rate structure that will be flat. And the great news about this is that it will be a lot simpler for customers to compare our generation rate with PG&E's, and a lot easier for us to provide analysis to them that's understandable.
Do you want to maybe just spend 30 seconds on what the purpose of the CIA was originally? Just it's kind of... Well, Larry's question almost begs that, like, what was the deal to begin with?
There are differing opinions.
How about our opinion?
Some would say that this was an anti-competitive approach to the market, and the timing was such that PG&E requested this change really just a couple of months before our start date for serving customers. They were well aware of what our rates were going to be because we have a public process. They were well aware of our tier structure, and they were well aware that a flat gen rate at launch would essentially make our program impossible. We went to the Commission with a strong sense of urgency as soon as this filing was made public, and we explained what impact it would have on our program, and the Commission did hear us, and as a result of a lot of interface with the CPUC from us and some other parties, the CIA was delayed until we were up and running and established and able to adjust our structure to accommodate this new the new approach that PG&E would be using. Had this change happened prior to our launch, we could have planned accordingly, but it was brought up at such a time that we had already done our procurement, already submitted an implementation plan with a clear structure that would be used, and it was at a point where it would have had a detrimental impact, a fatal impact on MEA.
Okay.
If you want to fill a good time, you can read our testimony.
Our testimony on this is, I think the word would be zippy.
It makes for good reading.
Yeah. And there's lots of testimony too, so we can read lots of it. And so conservation incentive adjustment, you know, this is a core issue that's going to impact procurement and a lot of other components of you know, how we run our business. So that'll be coming up. There's a couple of other items that they're currently underway, determining how cap and trade revenues, auction revenues are going to be allocated. We'll provide comments on that tomorrow. And then, you know, there are other policy matters that are underway, which include demand response and energy efficiency. I won't touch on energy efficiency because Donna's going to be touching on that a little bit later. But that's the general overview of, you know, our involvement and the proceedings that we're involved, the type of proceedings that we're involved in. So a little bit longer than usual, a little bit more boring than usual, but I hope that the background is helpful and gives a foundation for, you know, our conversations in the future and our ongoing efforts at the Commission. Do folks have questions?
Okay.
Oh, my board meeting was yours. Okay.
I think we do have a couple public comments.
Yes. Thank you. I'd like to raise an issue with respect to the November 21 protest that you filed relative to PG&E's application for a smart grid high deployment project test, which is supposed to reduce energy requirements. And I'm quoting here, your staff wrote, the application proposes that cost recovery occur through the distribution revenue adjustment mechanism. This means that these PG&E plan costs will be borne by all customers, including community choice aggregation CCA customers. And I continue. While the application and testimony assert that the costs of the plan are reasonable, PG&E fails to provide any proof that the costs proposed are distribution costs and not generation costs. In fact, the application and testimony assert quite opposite, highlighting the benefit of $550 million to $1.1 billion in avoided energy procurement costs, end quote. Your staff apparently did not realize that if there are savings to PG&E customers from using smart meters, then there would be proportionate savings to MEA customers, making the argument moot. In any case, it's quite obvious that meters do not generate electricity any more than transmission lines, making MEA look rather foolish. I would suggest a little bit more further review before such matters get sent to the PUC. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to give some general updates on what is happening in the energy efficiency proceeding, aside from what we're going to be doing with MEA. Energy efficiency really didn't do anything for the first 6 months or so. The commissioner was appointed late. This is Mark Farron, who's the commissioner, and then he really didn't do anything for a long time. And like right before Thanksgiving, he decided we were going to do 6 months of work in 2 months. So we have had just wall-to-wall comments in that proceeding that have gone like right through the holiday weekend on the 23rd of December, which was major. It was on program guidance for the for the 2 years. What's happening is that energy efficiency has a 3-year cycle, and it was 2010 to 2012. They're adding 2013 and 2014 as sort of an extension on this cycle. And so there are, there's this incredibly, breakneck process to discuss all of the issues that usually take a lot longer. And a lot of the programs that PG&E is running are not doing well, just the same as last time they fell far short of their targets. There's a whole thing coming up on goals. We've done program guidance, we're going to do goals, potential, and reporting requirements, just all this stuff is all crunched together all at once. There is also a second energy efficiency proceeding, which involves the shareholders' incentives bonuses that the utilities have been getting on these programs. The good news is that they did not award bonuses this year. Generally, they have been awarding bonuses every December. The last program cycle, they awarded $240 million of bonuses to the utilities in California, and PG&E's was $104 million just for bonuses when they were actually eligible for penalties. And I think that it would be really important to determine, I haven't been able to figure this out yet, whether those bonuses are on the distribution side of the bill. I believe they are. Hopefully MEA will be doing its own energy efficiency programs, which will mean that we will not be paying quite as much of the bonuses. Unfortunately, there is a clause in the law that says, the new law, SB 790, which, says, we get the money except for statewide programs, and statewide programs are a big chunk of the money. It's about 60%. So if the statewide programs continue to be run under utilities and they continue to get these shareholders incentives for it, I think we should, protest that. So hopefully the commission will decide against that. But my discussion with the Mark Farron's advisor was that he was just totally committed to these incentives, which I think is horrible. I mean, Mark Farron lives in Marin. People should complain about this. It's just ridiculous.
Thanks, Barbara. Any other comments? Okay. Well, thanks again, Beth.
And I'm happy to respond to Jean's comment. I think that, one of the core issues that was brought up in this application and filing that PG&E submitted, I wish that I had it at hand actually, a little more helpful. It was broken down, the application is broken down into, I believe it was about 8 separate components of how PG&E wants to use this set of money, which is in the millions, hundreds of millions, that relates to, how is the smart grid being developed and who should participate in that. Many of the components, and there's discussion not only in the application but also in the testimony regarding the specific dollar figures of what the benefit is to the generation line item. And so when you are investing costs that create a generation benefit by charging those costs to the distribution line item, it's precluding other generation providers from providing those same benefits. One example that comes to mind is demand response. So when you're thinking about demand response tools that are installed, it looks like they're just installed on the distribution line item, but what's happening when you utilize demand response, you're reducing energy costs, and it's creating this strong generation benefit, and it doesn't really relate to distribution. It's offsetting generation, it's acting like generation, and so this is how many of these components that, you talked about smart meters. Yes, there's physical meters that are being installed, and there's a certain cost of the meters and reading the meters and things like that, but then when it comes to the interaction of the grid and generation and all of the various factors with a physical piece of hardware, the cost allocation is not a clear distribution cost when there are extensive and, in fact, in the testimony, majority generation benefits. If that helps some of your concern.
All I did was quote it.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I love being quoted.
Okay, great. Let's move on to item 11. Development of an MEA energy efficiency plan.
So what I want to introduce tonight, this is really just an item for discussion that we're going to be getting more detailed discussion happening at the technical committee meeting, and then bringing this back to the board again next month for consideration. But we wanted to introduce it this evening to get any early feedback that folks might have, and to make sure there's some familiarity with our goals and objectives. So energy efficiency has always been very important to Marin Energy Authority. In fact, it was really one of the cornerstone goals of our, when we were founding, when we were being founded, it was really part of our vision, because it will allow us to reduce the energy usage in Marin, which by default allows us to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It also provides benefits to customers by reducing energy costs, and we think both of those things are real valuable to our community, obviously. There have been a couple of actions that MEA has already taken that demonstrate our goal towards energy efficiency in the community. And the first is that we provide added rebates for energy efficiency upgrades through participating in the California energy upgrade program. And these rebates are in addition to what customers already receive through the statewide program and the IOU rebates. These are on a small scale, though. What we're going to talk about tonight is actually taking this to a whole new level. So this is the starting point. We've also included energy efficiency in our implementation plan, really in our early version of the implementation plan that was first approved back in early 2010. Again, it continues to remain a part of our implementation plan. We've worked it into our plans going forward. As we plan to procure energy, we expect to see a slight diminishing of energy needs as we're able to roll out more energy efficiency and local solar installation. And then the last thing that's important to mention here is that MEA was very involved in a piece of legislation that worked its way through the process last year. This is SB 790 that was signed into law in October and went into effect January 1st. And one of the reasons we sponsored this legislation was that it really strengthened the ability of CCAs to administer local energy efficiency programs. And so it's not a coincidence that we're here in our very first January meeting to talk about our energy efficiency plan, because SB 790 specifies that we can bring a board-approved plan to the CPUC for approval. And by doing so, we can elect to become a third-party administrator of energy efficiency funds. The other bill, the legislative mandate that's listed here is Assembly Bill 117, which was passed back in 2002. And this really created a platform for CCA programs to access energy efficiency funds. The additions that were made through Senate Bill 790 just eliminate or reduce the burden of accessing those funds. And so this is a really great time for us to get our plan in place and go to the commission for it. Funds are already being collected from CCA customers through a non-bypassable charge authorized by the CPUC. And so we would simply be redirecting those funds into our program so that we can administer a program that conforms to our local goals and needs. So the step that needs to be followed, the primary step, is to submit an energy efficiency plan to the CPUC for certification in order to receive funds. So here we have a list of the 5 things that the CPUC will be looking for in our plan. So first we have to demonstrate that our plan advances the public interest in maximizing cost-effective electricity savings and related benefits. And there's a lot of language about what that means, so we'll be using that in our plan. The second item is accommodating the need for broader statewide or regional programs. So we need to describe how we're going to fit within and enhance what's already available and add value. We need to include some specific audit and reporting requirements. And here we'll be looking to use what the CPUC is used to is typically hiring a third-party evaluation and measurement vendor that would be doing a third-party evaluation to verify savings that are achieved by the program. And then the 5th thing is including performance metrics that demonstrate how we're going to achieve our objectives. So all of these things are being woven into the plan as we develop it. The plan has two elements, and within the two elements there are a couple of components. The first is the direct service element, and this would be the first element that we would be launching. We're really targeting the spring. We'd like to launch this as soon as April 1st, if we're able to get the revenue stream in place by that time. And it includes four main sections. The first is a focus on convenience store and small grocers. So these would be mini marts, sometimes you have a food mart at a gas station, those sorts of things would be the target for this piece of the program. We're working with a vendor that has teamed up with the Marin City Community Development Corporation, and they have a training program for folks in the community that want to get into the energy efficiency contracting business. And so we'll be able to leverage some of that work that's being done there and hopefully bring some of those folks into the workforce and give them some real world experience. So this vendor has some expertise working, actually a lot of work that they've done has been in Southern California through Southern California Edison. They've come up here now to team up with the Marin City Community Development Corporation, and so I think it's a really a great opportunity for us to be using an experienced energy efficiency vendor and a local kind of job creation engine, training engine, and bring those two together to help get some programs going in our community. So this first piece is really exciting, and the second piece also is really compelling. A multifamily energy efficiency program will really be the second target area. We'll be targeting places where there are multiple folks, apartment buildings predominantly, where in some cases there are some, there's a single meter for multiple units, which can add to the complexity of doing energy efficiency programs that really pencil out for the consumer. So there's a great approach that's being proposed here that will allow us to really hit this sector that has been very untapped to date. This also happens to be a sector where the energy reductions will really have an important impact on the families living in these homes. So it's really a win-win with a value add beyond just the greenhouse gas reductions, but a value add that helps the community as well. The third point here is enhancing the existing Energy Upgrade California program. The CPUC is very interested in leveraging the foundation that they've built in launching this program and keeping it going. And so we'd like to look at ways that we can help make this program even more successful and get it out to more folks in the community. This is a residential program. It's for all housing sizes and hasn't been highly utilized yet in Marin or in many parts of California. So we're hopeful that we can enhance what's been done to date and leverage what's already happening. And then the last point here is coordination and outreach to the existing Marin Energy Watch partnership. And there are a couple of reasons why this is important. We're kind of at a point where we may be making a transition, where the Marin Energy Watch partnership has been operating a program for many years. They typically, if you aren't familiar with them, they typically help many of our cities and towns and our schools and our public facilities, our libraries, to do energy audits and upgrades. A lot of lighting audits have been done, some HVAC. They have also been able to use their funding and some other funding sources to help with some solar installations at these community buildings. And what we'd like to do is partner with them to make sure that the folks in the community, the businesses and the contractors have seamless program delivery from what they've seen before and to what they're seeing now. We also may need to work with the Energy Watch Partnership to be able to serve non-MEA customers. Ideally, we'd like to offer a seamless program to our customers and non-MEA customers throughout Marin. But if we're not able to do that directly, we may need to have a funding stream coming through the existing partnership, at least on a transitional basis. So that's one of the pieces we'll be fleshing out over the coming weeks. The second element is the financing element. This is one that we would target for launching in the fall so that we aren't trying to do everything at once, and we're breaking it into pieces here. The finance piece will include three components. The first is a PACE program, And the PACE program will be contingent on a funding stream being available for one. We've been in discussions with a number of partner agencies that are interested in providing the financing to customers who want to participate in a PACE program, both residential and commercial. We've also been in discussions recently and long-term with the Sonoma PACE program and looking at ways that we could use a lot of their backroom services to administer the program. We've been in discussion with the Marin Community Foundation regarding providing the funding pool that would be used for customers. And we're hopeful that that will go forward, but if it doesn't, there are some other banks that are very willing to serve that role. And so we're discussing that possibility with them so that we have a couple of options to draw from. Our proposal is going to allow for some flexibility on that front as we firm up who our partners are going to be. The second component is an on-bill financing component, and this will be an opportunity for customers who don't want to use the PACE methodology and put the energy upgrade cost onto their property tax bill to simply put it onto their energy bill, their electricity bill that they get from PG&E. And this is something that's been done in other parts of California, and we're excited about the possibility of offering it here as a different structure for customers who want to avoid the upfront cost of a big energy overhaul in their home and be able to pay it off over time. And then the last item here is something that's really, we have to give kudos to our community advocates for continually bringing this idea to us. It's an idea that comes to us from other parts of the country. In the Northeast and also in Texas, there has been this idea called a standard offer for energy efficiency procurement. And we're looking at how we might be able to apply that here in California. And because it hasn't been done before in California, we are in the interesting position of potentially needing to create a market for this. And it's hard to do that when you're a small entity like us. We've talked to some of the vendors in the other parts of the country that are already providing this service to find out if we could lure them over here to do the same thing here. And because we have a different regulatory environment, different rules in play, a different CAISO, different independent system operator, it may be cumbersome to do this, but we think that it's possible to do it on a pilot basis and see how it works. So we are developing some plans around that and looking at a pilot program that might be able to launch in the fall. So those are the main elements of the program. And just to give you a sense of the process and timing, in order to get a sense of what an appropriate budget allocation would be, we have submitted a data request to PG&E. This was submitted on December 21st. And it's requesting information about the funds that they collect for energy efficiency. It's not written in any one place how much PG&E is collecting. It is allocated to them in a wide range of proceedings spread out over the many years that they've been in operation. And so our request is asking for the total amount of dollars collected through the public goods charge funds in 2009, 2010, 2011, and then what is projected to be collected going forward. Now the public goods charge is going to be called something different, most likely going forward, but nonetheless we're requesting that information. They will provide it. The second question is asking for the total amount of energy efficiency procurement funds. This is simply a separate bucket of funds. We wanted to call it out to make sure that it is provided to us. Again, we're asking for energy efficiency procurement funds for the years 2009 through 2011, and then the amount projected to be collected in 2012 through 2015. And then the third part of the request is asking that they list any other non-bypassable charges used to fund energy efficiency activities for the same year time frame, going backwards and going forwards. We have requested that this information be provided by January 11th, and they did indicate that they received our request after it was submitted on December 21st. So we'll be looking forward to having that information provided to allow us to assign budget categories to the programmatic categories in line with what the fair share for our customer base should be. So that's the first step that we have started. The second is, as I mentioned, we've been in discussion with a number of partner agencies. The vendor that I mentioned that's coming in with a lot of experience from Southern California, the Marin City Community Development Corporation, the Marin Community Foundation, Clean Fund, Wells Fargo, some other banks, Circle Bank, we've reached out to them, and also the Marin County Energy Watch Partnership Program. So we've been in discussions with a lot of these partner agencies, and we've actually been circulating a draft with a lot of good input from these folks. The next steps are receiving the data request response, and then we have scheduled or targeted a discussion for our next technical committee meeting, which will be held later in January, where we can get into these programmatic components and get more feedback. And then we anticipate bringing this to your board for approval on February 2nd. If we have the information that we need at that time, it is unknown whether we will get the information that is needed from PG&E in a timely manner. And there may be some additional things that the technical committee would like us to look at or incorporate. And we'll need to weigh that against our eagerness for submitting this as soon as possible at the beginning of the year. So we will be going through those steps, and then after board approval, we will submit our plan to the CPUC for certification. So that's an overview of the plan thus far, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Director Marshall.
Great presentation, and I mean, this is a big deal. For those of you who are new, this is a huge deal to even have gotten this provision embedded within SB 790. It has potential, I believe, for several $1 million to come into this agency, and perhaps you can comment on that. But my question goes to these provisions are also sunsetting, I believe, at the end of 2012, right? Because the PGC has to be renewed through the legislature. I believe, so if you'll just fill in the details for me on that, and assuming that my information is correct, what happens after that? I mean, would we just potentially get this one chunk? And I know you've thought through all these scenarios, so could you just say a little bit more about the potential value to us and what happens if the program ends?
Yeah, so the funds that you're referring to are the first section of our data request. These are the public goods charge funds, or the PGC funds. Those have sunsetted. And there was a big push in the summer during the legislative cycle to extend those funds through a legislative mandate. And that, the folks promoting that did not prevail. There seemed to be an interest at the CPUC and among the utilities to allow it to sunset, but to continue the programs and even continue the same revenue, but collected in a different way. So it would simply, the concept is that it would continue to be collected on the IOU's bill, but it wouldn't be due to a legislative mandate, it would be due to a CPUC/IOU decision. So that shift seems to be underway right now. There is some uncertainty about how that will be resolved and if there would be any differences in the amount that's being collected. And that's why this data request may help us, at least if we use the number that PG&E provides for what they anticipate going forward. That's at least a reasonable number to use for our request. The second part of our data request.
So the answer, I'm sorry, the answer on that one is because it got renamed or shifted into a different bucket, if you will, it's not going to go away, potentially, if we're awarded those funds.
That is the likely outcome. That's what the commissioners are saying is going to happen. That it's not going away. There's going to be no reduction in the amount of EE funds collected and used. The second part of our data request is for the procurement funds. These funds are not going away. They're already collected and used for other things, so that isn't affected by this legislative issue.
Director Cromwell.
Dawn, have Freddie and Fannie stopped fighting PACE programs? Have they taken such a beating nationally that that's dropped off their priority list, or?
No, they have not. They have not stopped fighting. And I see Greg shaking his head. He knows a lot about this actually, because his firm is assisting Sonoma with their PACE program. I'll say a few things and feel free to chime in if you want. But there have been efforts at the federal level to get some legislation approved that would kind of supersede what Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have done and ensure that folks that participate in the PACE program aren't subject to any litigation. Really what Fannie and Freddie have done just exposes the customer to possible litigation. Because what happens, for those of you that are new to this, is when you put an assessment on your property for an energy improvement through a PACE program, you are taking superiority over the lender on your mortgage, and banks don't like that. So it's something that has been done many times over for, you know, when you're putting your electrical wires underground or you're having to fix something on the street, and the whole community is subject to this type of allocation on the bill or on the property tax. But to have it apply in a PACE program, because this is new, it's just being questioned. And so the way that Sonoma is handling this is by putting a disclaimer in all of their material, letting customers know that they can't guarantee that you know, there won't be any issues with their mortgage contract or their mortgage. Other PACE programs that we're in the process of starting have they suspended for a while, and now there has been a shift to launch many commercial PACE programs and avoid the residential piece, in hopes that this federal legislation will make things very clean going forward when it's approved. The commercial programs, the commercial PACE projects are able to not have this issue, because you typically know who the lender is. With residential mortgages, the mortgage is often sold to one party and then to another, and it's impossible typically to track down who would need to approve the assessment. On a commercial property, that's not the case. You can find out who the lender is, you can go to them. And in some cases, what we found with these commercial programs is that the existing lender is happy to add it for a little extra fee. They simply add it on to the existing mortgage as an assessment. So the commercial programs are a little simpler and less risky for the customer, but both are still possible. And the Sonoma County program has been going strong despite the regulations. Do you want to add anything?
You did it perfectly.
Do you anticipate a disclaimer for private parties in our program?
Absolutely, yes. We would want to, in fact, we would want to mirror the Sonoma program as much as possible, because they've done a lot of the due diligence on one hand, but also to make it simple for the customer. There are many contractors that do work both in Sonoma and Marin, and we love to have the requirements that are almost identical to the extent that we're able to achieve that.
Director,
Pass.
okay. Any other questions or comments for Donna?
Just a quick comment. I wanted to just quickly acknowledge Barbara George on this issue of energy efficiency, because, you know, I once said that I think you were born in the PUC, or at least had a talk over there. But energy efficiency is and remains your, you know, one of your big pushes, and you have done so on behalf of CCA. And this is a big deal. If we are awarded this, and Dawn, I know you're putting in extra hours to get this, you know, request done, and I mean, it's a really big deal. So thank you for all you've done, Barbara, to help make this possible too.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, Gene.
I assume this involves both electricity and gas, or not?
No, this is just for electricity at this point in time.
Okay, Donna, just to reiterate, next step is TechCom hearing.
That's correct.
Okay. And that's going to be this month.
Yeah, I'm glad that you asked. We are likely to go back to our original technical committee schedule that we had last year, which would be the third Tuesday of the month at 9 a.m. That was something I wanted to bring up at the end during staff matters to see if that worked for our current TechCom folks.
What day is that?
The 17th.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, all right.
It's just incredible to see MEA being able to, just write a plan and submit it to the commission. I'm so excited about this. I have no idea. Yes, we do. How many years this has been in the works. So I just want to say I think that one of the things that would be good to have in the plan, and I wrote a long piece to provide some of the background legal issues as well as history at the CPUC to bolster our ability and our resolve to do this. That right now there's something called an energy efficiency partnership in Marin, which Dawn described as the Marin Energy Watch Partnership, and they've been working away, done a lot of good things over the years. However, it would really be cumbersome to have both operating, and I think it's a good idea to tell the commission that we would essentially be taking over the responsibilities and absorbing the people that that are involved in that program. I think that it would be most convenient to do that at the end of the year this year, because the cycle has been running. This would be the third year of the cycle, so that wouldn't, there wouldn't be any problem with breaking the contract with PG&E in the middle of the year. But we do need to tell them now, because the commission is planning on extending these programs for 2 years, and they will be negotiating extensions for the partnership contracts. There's a little passage in the memo that I just want to call your attention to, the San Francisco comments in the proceeding about what an incredible hassle it is to have a local government partnership because of the way PG&E messes with them all the time. And so this is the opportunity for us is to have an energy efficiency program that is not controlled by PG&E. They need to control energy efficiency so they get more bonuses out of it, and it results in just skewing the whole values of the program and making it just making it not work in a whole lot of ways. So it's a ticklish matter. There are details to work out. Regarding the gas funds, though, I think that there's one possibility that we should look at, because Marine Energy Authority, the Joint Powers Agreement, actually was not limited to just marine clean energy. There were other elements that were put into the original plan that basically said the Marine Energy Authority would do all kinds of things related to energy in Marin County. And I think that on that basis, we should go ahead and request to administer gas energy efficiency funds as well. So all of these things are up in the air as far as funding, because gas money was actually, a lot of the gas money was taken away this year by the legislature. That might happen again. It was just a one-year appropriation, but who knows what's going to happen. I think there will be some uncertainty about the funding of the electricity side also. But basically, the CPUC has just said, we're going to take this money, we're going to authorize the utilities to collect this money, just like they were doing it before. And I do believe there may be challenges. And there may be, you know, the legislature might not look kindly on it. They, you know, kind of indicated last year that they didn't want that to happen. But who knows? There's a lot of momentum to a lot of these programs, and I think that people feel really, you know, I think there's a majority. There just wasn't a 2/3 majority because this is considered a fee. So it didn't pass because of that new initiative that, you know, required a new fee to have a 2/3 vote.
Well, thank you, Barbara. Well, again, this is very exciting, and we'll look forward to further work from the technical committee. Don, anything else at this point? Okay, great. And we should be able to move through these remaining items fairly quickly. I know it's getting a little late. Item 12 is resolution of the board of MEA approving the revised MEA net energy metering. Oh, Jane?
I'll take this one.
All right.
So this is just for a small revision for our net energy metering tariff. And our net energy metering program is utilized by customers who have a grid-connected renewable energy system. We have almost 400 customers with solar on their roofs who are currently using our net energy metering program. And basically, just for those of you who need a refresher, on net energy metering, basically it requires a special meter at your house, and it tracks the difference between the energy that's being produced by your solar system and the energy that's being used in your home, and the difference is netted out on your bill. We have a really great program for our customers. I think it's especially beneficial for a few different reasons, and it incentivizes the oversizing of solar systems or renewable energy systems for our customers, because we credit our customers at a premium rate for any excess electricity that they're generating. So it's an extra penny per kilowatt hour in addition to the base rate. And that's also what we charge for Deep Green, is the extra penny for a kilowatt hour, which was part of the reasoning behind that extra bonus. Also, if for any month that our customers generate more electricity than they're consuming, we give them a $4 bonus credit to help offset this minimum monthly charge that PG&E puts on the bill. Another great thing about our program is that we have no limit to the amount that we'll credit. So we'll just keep on crediting our customers for as much electricity as their renewable energy system is producing, and it also never zeroes out. And so at the end of the year, at the end of our fiscal year, which happens to be on April 1st, we contact all of our customers who have gained a credit of $100 or more. And we call them up or send them a letter and say, hey, you have a credit for this amount. Would you like to be paid out in a check, or do you want it to just keep rolling over? So that's just a brief overview of why our net energy metering program is so great. And the revision that we're bringing to the board today is pretty simple. In the tariff, it requires that any customer who's going to be able to take advantage of this yearly cash out option needs to be a current Marine Clean Energy customer. And that's really to prevent customers from joining and then leaving as soon as they have a credit. But there is specific certain circumstances where a customer is leaving because they move out of our service territory, so they're not actually opting out of our program and choosing PG&E. It's more of a default that they move out of our service territory. So we want to allow customers in those types of situations to still be able to take advantage of their credit and not lose it. So that's simply with the changes in the tariff, the proposed change. Any questions or comments?
Can I have a motion?
Move to approve resolution number 2012-1.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next item, is item 13, resolution of the Board of Directors of MEA approving the revised MEA fees rule number 001.
I'll take this one too. This is also just a couple of revisions to reflect some changes that we had since we began operating way back in 2010. And the fees rule discusses opt-out fees for customers who opt out after 60 days after they've started service with us, and also discusses some of the details of opt-out noticing and how customers opt out. And so the revisions to this rule just clarify that customers who would like to opt out need to request to opt out through Marin Clean Energy and not PG&E. And it also clarifies that we'll be delivering 5 notices instead of 4.
Have any questions?
The fee has not changed, correct?
Correct.
It looks like it is not, okay.
How about a motion?
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That matter carries. Item 14, appointment of the treasurer to the MEA board. Don, do you want to lead this off?
Sure. So as we wrapped up the last year, we had 2 board members who had to rotate off of the board because they were leaving their council. And Director Thornton, who was our San Anselmo representative, served in the capacity of treasurer for MEA. And because she's no longer on our board, this position needs to be filled on a going forward basis. I think it's worth noting that it's not a very rigorous position. It's important, but we do have an accountant doing with a lot of rigor, keeping track of our day-to-day expenses and budget and that sort of thing. But it is an important formality for us to have a treasurer of record, and so tonight we need to make that appointment. We do have a board representative who has graciously offered to take on this role, and that's Director Martin with Ross. I believe he's interested in serving this role on behalf of the.
So do we need kind of a formal motion?
Let's get a motion of the board.
For Chris, for Director Martin.
Yes.
So moved.
Public comment.
By acclaim. Well, public comment first. Let's do it by acclaim. All in favor?
Yeah.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Good volunteering.
Okay, finally, item 15 is board member and staff matters. Hearing, Donna.
I typically don't jump in here, but I do have a couple of items because this is our first meeting with senior members, and I just want to go through a couple of logistics very quickly. So just
including,
as a,
let's give them fair warning about the next meeting. It's going to be even longer, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Dark chocolate should be served.
Yeah, I have to ask, are there espresso beans in these chocolates? Is that no, that'd be good if they don't. So just so everyone has a good sense of the lay of the land and the process, our practice is to send out a board packet 1 week prior to every board meeting. We do the same thing with our committees. So the technical committee and the executive committee will typically get an agenda distributed the week prior to the meeting. All materials that are available at that time are also distributed as part of the packet. As you saw this time around, you'll continue to see there typically is a supplemental packet that comes out the following week that includes items that we weren't able to include in the board packet. Typically this includes regulatory items because we're submitting so many filings that after, even a week prior to the board meeting, there typically are a few that are still in the process of being filed prior to our meeting. And then there are other items that need to go into the supplemental for various reasons. I wanted to note, and even for our existing board members, we have a new goodie at this meeting tonight, thanks to Sarah, our clerk. She graciously offered to create a binder for everyone, including our staff, and We'd love to hear feedback on this, whether this is helpful or if there are any issues with it. Sarah's goal, and really our goal, is to make sure that you have the materials you need in an easy to find manner. And the idea would be that you leave your binders here and we replace the inserts each board meeting. You're welcome to take any of the material with you if you want for reference. We would simply be recycling it if you don't, so really you're welcome to take it. But we hope to continue providing a binder to each of you on an ongoing basis. If you prefer to not receive one, say paper, or if you're using an electronic form of viewing the material, just let us know. We're happy to do that.
No negative criticism, please.
Beautiful job.
I should, yes. Go ahead.
My question is, some of us are on a distribution, just an email distribution for board materials and TechCom stuff. Are previous board members able to remain on that distribution?
Absolutely. That distribution list includes the Marin IJ, the city managers, and
So we
anyone
can
who
still be notified?
Absolutely. You will remain on that list.
Sarah, please leave me
I
on
will
the list.
stalk you forever.
Oh, fabulous.
Do you want to give it a little bit of a preview? We're going to be tackling some weighty issues.
Yeah, absolutely. So our February board meeting and the following board meetings, particularly February, is going to be a lengthy meeting most likely and rather substantive. We anticipate bringing a power supply contract for our agreement with Shell to serve the new load. That's going to be a substantive item. We'll also be introducing rates, likely at that time, so that we can allow for a 60-day review period prior to approval in April. And we have a couple of other items. I should also mention, as connected to our agreement with Shell, would be a security agreement with River City Bank that will likely be coming to your board that evening. So those, and there may be, does anyone have other? Okay, I think those are the main. Enough, yeah. Okay. John says it's enough. So, and then we'll also be bringing aboard the budget for the coming fiscal year to the board in March for approval. And that timing is necessary so that we can ensure that our new budget goes into effect on April 1st. So those are that's just a preview of some of the things to come. All of the items that I mentioned are going to be pre-discussed at a committee meeting, either an ad hoc or a standing committee. So there will be more opportunities to interface. All board members are welcome to attend any committee meeting, whether you're on the committee or not. And our practice has been to send out agendas to all board members. So if you get the TechCom agenda and you think you're not on it, that's okay. We intended to do that, and you're welcome to attend any of those meetings. Also, agenda materials are always posted on the website at the same time that we send the email distribution list out, or within the 15 minutes or so. So if you ever need to access materials and you don't have your email accessible, you can simply go to the website. I also want to mention that the recording that's done of our meetings, we're really grateful to the Community Media Center of Marin for doing this. An amazing service that's provided here in the community. And I think has been a real benefit for us to be able to utilize the service. These meetings are recorded. They are available for folks to access on our website. You might see, and that's one reason that our minutes tend to not be super detailed, because the full recordings are available to anyone that would like to get them off the website. And then these meetings are also aired, I believe, a couple times a week. I know I've seen them Wednesdays and Fridays in the evening.
On channel 27, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so if you
Yeah.
fell asleep during the
You'd be in there.
But you can TiVo it.
Okay, so everyone rest up. But this was a great meeting, everyone. Covered a lot of ground. So with that, we're adjourned.
Happy New Year.